Hey everybody, welcome to Critical Thoughts. I'm Braxton Smith. Joining me today is co-host Jake Bird. Today we're going to talk about the process of critical thinking. Something that we've been meaning to touch on since we started this page up really is what we're all about, is actually critically thinking and analyzing certain situations, current events, just day-to-day events in our own lives, and trying to make our lives better through the process. So, you got anything you want to throw in there, Jake, before we get started?
Oh, nothing really. I mean, that's pretty much what we're about, and it's kind of been always the key of moving forward and trying to progress beyond whatever level you're at, whether you're talking about society or just your own individual life. So,
Yeah, and the focus a lot lately on our channel has been that of a political nature, unfortunately, and that wasn't obviously our original intent when starting this up. Our intent was to get you to question everything, even what we're putting out. Absolutely, we love to be challenged. And it was actually an episode we had not too long ago that kind of spurred me to make this video, was talking about how in the past I used to fumble around a lot. Like in high school, I would get schooled all the time in the school of thought. We'd have debates, and usually I could throw out a few words and throw out a few not really serious arguments, but just something that just made people feel good. And sometimes I could win over a debate, but at the end of it all, it was really a sham. There's nothing logical about it. Nobody was better for it. And I think all too often we don't apply enough critical thinking. We aren't logical about how we solve these problems. And eventually I realized that. And ever since then I got better and better. And now I've gotten to kind of to a point where it's not so important about winning so much as just having the best idea prevail. So putting ideas forth, forge them in fire, and whatever comes out at the end of it all is the product we're left with, and hopefully something better. So one example I wanted to bring up of critical thinking, anyways, is actually taking principles. You see a certain situation, how it works here, and applying it to something else, like laws, for example, laws of physics. Like, for example, we know that if we jump out a two-story window, it's going to end badly because of gravity. Or like a better example, like along the lines of this kind of things we like to talk about, is basic supply and demand. Okay, that's economics 101. So we can look at a situation like Weimar Republic, for example, when they started printing out a lot of money. Obviously, when you increase the supply exponentially like that and there's no demand for that dollar, you're going to decrease the value of it, right? And so we can take that same logic and apply it to what's happening right now with the US dollar, for example. We're printing a lot of that, we're increasing the supply of it, thereby decreasing the demand. But that's one of the fundamentals of critical thinking, is realizing that there's repeating patterns. Like, you can take laws like that and apply it to each situation. So when you see somebody talking about something, if they're really knowledgeable on it, it isn't because necessarily they've memorized something about it, some kind of information about the subject. It's that they have a set of tools that they use, and they can go into it and logically pick it apart and explain how certain things work and how certain things will turn out.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's pretty much the foundations for critical thinking for me is understanding the process. How do you format an argument or try to understand a situation to where it'll come out logically making sense? And then, like you were talking about, knowing the basics. If you're talking economics, what's economics 101? Because the fundamental principle of any advanced study, no matter how advanced it is, it's got to follow the principles of which it's based in. And if you start hearing something that sounds like it's breaking one of those, that's where you need to look into it. Because
Yeah.
if it is, that means it's bullshit.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stop there. There's several other tools, and what Jake was kind of alluding to is just merely questioning things. I think all too often people fall into this, they have their blinders up and they're just, whatever way their reins are turned, they just follow. They just eat up whatever's laid in the troughs for them. For example, like anytime you go to the dentist, this is one of my funnest ones. You go to the dentist, try and refuse a fluoride treatment by them, and I swear you'll have like an idiocracy moment. I do it every time. I've done research on it. I don't believe in what the institutions are telling me about that. I've done profound research on it because I have gotten to a point where I do question everything. And but yeah, you just try to refuse it. It was one of the creepiest moments. Just do it for fun, believe me. But extends beyond that. I used to look at people that would question certain things, and they would say certain things that were just so taboo and arbitrary to what everybody's around me saying, and I would look at them and I'd think, oh, what fools, what idiots, how could they possibly, until I actually started looking into and researching what they were talking about, and I started matching it up, and I started seeing holes in what I was believing, and those holes being filled by these people that are questioning the establishment. Because the thing is you got to understand too that people have their motives. For example, some people have the motive to manipulate you into certain situations that'll benefit them. And then some people are indeed more benevolent, like Jake and I. Don't take her word for it, but I promise there's no motive. We aren't trying to get rich. We're genuinely just trying to make ourselves and those around us a little wiser, and hopefully society a little better. So I think that's all I got in the ways of that right now.
Well, I don't know about rich, but definitely one of my concerns is wealth, but I'm not doing it with these videos. And that's another thing too. Another aspect of critical thinking is judgment and knowing the bounds of your judgment, right? If there's a difference between saying, well, a preference, you don't like a certain preference, versus, well, okay, you don't want to wear a helmet while riding a motorcycle. Guess I need to make a law against that, because that's dangerous, okay? You shouldn't be making laws to stop people from doing things that they consciously know the outcomes from, unless it harms other people. Unless you can somehow make the case that falling off your bicycle always and will ever cause you to propel head first into somebody and kill them, right? That's preposterous in my mind, because you're trying to just impose a preference on the scale of an actual, like, universal law, or at least wherever, in this case, the legal code extends to. And, that there's plenty of cases where people may be personally offended by something, but in that case, you just handle it within your own sphere, your personal sphere. You don't try to demand other people to bow and kowtow to you by going to the police or something, or anyone that's got a bigger cudgel than what you have. That's totalitarian.
Yeah, so basically, anytime somebody justifies something as the law is the law, that's basically the same as because I said so. So it's a lot of red flags for that one. A lot of logical fallacies can probably be found in that one. So, yeah, these are just some of the basics. What I wanted to ultimately lead to, though, is how you take these basic tools, and then you go beyond just when problems hit you. You obviously you have your day-to-day issues that you have to work through, and then you have your day-to-day issues that are brought to you by the media. But I encourage you to also take it beyond that. Earlier, for example, like I was talking about fluoride. We take a less controversial subject and say, for example, with your own dieting. That's probably one of the more important things you can actually look at, because that directly affects you. The myth that was perpetuated that if you eat fat, well, then you get fat. So that's why we have fat-free stuff. That's so gimmicky. Now, after doing a little research, a lot of people are coming to realize that it's really the calories and sugars that are what you need to look out for. I can get into the weeds about all that, but I'm just saying, don't wait for an issue or a problem to land in your lap, going across your news feed on Facebook or whatever. Just think about everything you're doing in your life, how it can be made better. It's just about everything I do. I mean, down to knife sharpening even. I did research on that because I realized I didn't know anything about knife sharpening. And obviously the little hand tools that they give you, the little idiot-proof ones, that isn't cutting it. So, that was terrible. But you get my point, though. Just like if there's something that means a lot to you, by all means, do your research. And sometimes you aren't going to have all the information. And I guess that's the highlight of this video is making decisions when you don't have all the information. Because majority of the time, I've come to realize you won't have all the information. The best thing you can do is just entertain certain ideas and take into account certain probabilities of certain outcomes and mitigate and make decisions accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important thing, is to be able to try to at least figure out a set of good possible answers to a problem you've got, even if you ain't got the actual situation and all the knowledge behind it. And, there's another thing, trying to figure out how to get those answers. You were talking about motives earlier. There is nothing in any sentence I have ever said that will logically or just intuitively communicate my motives. You'd have to watch my actions and what I've said over the years and actually pay attention to me, but that's something you could do. What are the signs of a natural greedy person, for instance? How do greedy people usually behave in certain instances, or impatient people, or, just people that are wanting to troll you? What are some of the signs with that? Help that to filter your information and always know, well, okay, these are signs, but how reliable are they? And what's the foil to them, right? If this is a sign and it's 70% accurate, that it's a for sign, then what type of sign would say 70% against, right? And just, plug and chug and keep moving on.
Yeah, and so wrapping all this up, summing everything up, is if I had to convey one thing to you, is that it's through these decision-making process that, like I said, if things are forged in fire, the ideas are forged in fire, and the best ones come out ahead. It's like whenever you commit a certain action or you put a certain action into place, you get reactions out of it. You get certain results from it. And that's why it's so imperative to hone your critical thinking abilities and make the best decisions possible, because you do get better returns from it. So if you keep engaging in these, I guess you would say, problematic way of doing things, if you do it in a flawed manner, if you will, you're going to get less returns from it. You're going to keep losing these debates. You're going to keep getting pissed off and not understanding why. And that's one thing too, I guess. One final thing, I guess, if I had to put out is, you're talking about trolling, how you get pissed off at trolling and all that. One of the most important things I've come to realize even recently, and I still have to constantly remind myself, don't say things and don't do things under the influence of emotions. I think emotions are probably even more mind-altering than alcohol itself. I've seen it with society too, as people get really upset about something. They take a few days to sober up about it, and all of a sudden they're singing a whole different song about it. And that's all I got anyways, Jake. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, emotions tend to work more like a smoke detector or something. It'll let you know that something's going on, but is it because, you're cooking too close to the smoke detector? Is it a fire in that room that's it in? Or is it a smoke coming from a fire in another room? It won't tell you that. It'll just know that something is going on related to whatever is setting it off. And the whole point of critical thinking is to understand what is actually going on in the situation, takes a lot longer time, and you're not always going to be happy with the outcome. I'm sure most people would be more happy if the smoke detector was just going off because they were cooking, not because their house was burning down. But, you know, you got to take what is and make the best outcome out of it once you know how to do it.
So this is why I bring you along, Jake. Couldn't have expressed it. I actually learned something from that one. That was really well put. Yeah, well, with nothing more to say, thank you again for tapping into Critical Thoughts, breaking through the white noise to bring you media that matters.